My name is Mei Li Tao. I am of Chinese, Cambodian, and Thai descent. My parents were Cambodian refugees who arrived in the United States in the 1970s. I am an Asian American raised in Los Angeles, and I would love to tell you my story. My grandma raised me because my parents were too busy running their multiple shops, and my parents have run anything from donut shops to Chinese food restaurants to 99-cent outlets. My grandma, keeping the Chinese dialect of Chuzhou alive, spoke to me only in Chinese because she couldn't speak to me in English. I ended up being watched by her because one day my grandma had come to visit. She approached the apartment steps, which were in West Los Angeles, and heard nothing but crying and screaming. My mom had left me with a babysitter who put me in timeout and said that she couldn't dedicate her whole shift to watch me. My grandma instantly insisted that she should watch me, and she did so for the next 15 years. This apartment, and how I remember it in a sepia-toned rose-colored glasses, I remember accidentally locking the bathroom door once and being spanked. I also remember being potty trained in the living room with a little baby fake toilet. And for some reason, I remember trying to pee on top of the toilet seat like a boy. A small yet big boxy TV set played Looney Tunes, and we watched whatever the antenna would give us. I would wake up with a bowl of rice or noodles for breakfast, usually the leftovers from the day before. Sometimes it would be hot dogs and rice. Other days it would be rice and tofu with soy sauce. Grandma would be either cooking or diligently sitting at home. Sometimes she would pick up the debris on the carpet with her bare hands because we couldn't afford a vacuum. My mom eventually bought the house that I live in now. We lived in the master bedroom with my grandma, and boy did she snore. I attribute the fact of her loud snoring to my skills of falling asleep fast, because once she started snoring, it was game over. In our house lived 3 of my uncles. They always gathered at the table for dinner with a Budweiser in hand. They even let me try a sip once. Gathering around our plastic table with our classic red foldable chairs. There was not enough space for all of us to sit there, so I would always gather some of the food and eat in the living room with my grandma. In our culture, we addressed my uncles and aunts by numbers. Uncle number 2 always snuck out for a cigarette break. Uncle number 5 had weights in the backyard and spent his free time lifting weights and being Arnold Schwarzenegger buff. They teased me for being chubby and dark-skinned, and we always spoke in our traditional language. I got in trouble for drawing all over the walls and galloping, up and down the hallways. I wasn't allowed to play outside because a Mexican pickup truck would carry me away. My favorite holidays were the ones where people would come over, and this usually took place on Chinese New Year, Chinese Halloween, or a death anniversary date. We would connect 2 plastic tables and display a wide array of roasted pork, longevity noodles, rice, and stir fry. The uncles would get drunk and laugh as I rode my tricycle around the house. We weren't allowed to be loud though, so it was pretty quiet for most of my life. I was enrolled in the public school system, and I instantly loved school because at home became boring for me. I was shy and also teased for being one of the only Asians at school. My parents always encouraged me to read when they took me to the library. And when I was at home, I was usually playing video games on my Super Nintendo or Nintendo 64. I was at a young age when my parents told me about their story and journey to America, and they have always stressed the importance of my education. I'm not sure how much I really understood at that age, but I knew they were happy when I brought back awards. So I brought back all sorts of awards: perfect attendance, straight A's, honors, scholar athlete, most improved, and so much more. As I was later enrolled in private Catholic school from 6th to 12th, I carried honors and loved extracurricular activities such as volleyball, softball, ASB secretary, Asian Pacific Club, and more. I divided my time with my grandma and my parents as I got older, spending some weekends and after school time with my parents for dinner. Even though my parents both started work at 4 a.m. or even earlier, my mom always had a 4-course meal on the table with traditional Khmer and Chinese dishes: sour and hot fish soup, lok lok, stir-fried veggies, We always gathered around the table to share our meal over food. All the while, since I was 7 years old, I would wake up early on the weekends to help at the store or hang out there in the afternoon. My clothes would smell like sweets and coffee or Chinese food. There was no daycare, so I was either alone at home or at the shop with a parent. I used to have to stand on a milk crate to help out because I couldn't reach the top of the showcase. Whether it was giving change or greeting customers, I spent a lot of time there, waiting for the clock to turn so we could go home. When my parents got a divorce, I went through a stage of rebellion. I tried to escape my mom's heartbrokenness by going out and driving around, hanging out with friends, and always being around others to numb the pain. Eventually, I went to college at UCSD. I chose this school because I qualified being on the top 3% of my class at St. Monica's, but also because it was the best and closest school to home in case my parents ever needed me to go to the shop. In fact, I spent most of my first year driving up to help them on the weekends and ended up paying for my first year with the savings that I had accrued over the past years of work. I studied communications, mostly because my mom pushed me to be a news reporter. She deemed it a safe occupation, so I ran with it. I ran with it for so long, I even interned for San Diego 6 News, the CW network, and met one of my mentors, Candace Nguyen. She threw me in the back of the truck sometimes, shared her work desk with me, and showed me what life would really be like reporting on the news, and it was definitely unbiased. I was appalled that most of the stories were based on ratings, and a lot of the stories, more human interest stories, which I was into, were pushed out. And Candace once told me, if your heart's not in it, don't do it. I stayed in San Diego to intern for UCSD's PR and marketing department, but mostly because I didn't want to go back home. I didn't want to return and tell my mom I didn't like it. So I put it off for as long as I could financially. I returned later in 2012 after I graduated. Coming back home was a mixed bag for me. I was so scared of living back with my mom that I ended up living with my brother at his house. My brother and my mom needed help, so I worked at the shop. But this time, I had a vision and I really stuck by it. This shop has so much potential. I wonder why more people don't know about it. And there it began. I started putting together a logo, t-shirts, proper signage, and I started to take more control of the business. My brother and mom looked at me in dismay. Obviously, I'm little Maylee, and what real change was I going to make to the business? I used the knowledge I got while I was away and went to work. I started innovating hybrid types of donuts, including the half croissant and half donut, the ube donut, the wow nut, and expanding upon our selection of a dozen to 120 to this day. I stayed up to date with what people wanted. I integrated delivery and customer service as well as adaptability. Whether it was our donuts at an event or at a large-scale company, the news and online media swarmed our shop as one of the best shops in the nation. I chose to come back so I could carry on my parents' legacy and to tell their story. I came back because of family, and I came back because I knew I could make a difference. In the creation of my products and work ethic, I always centered around the feeling my grandma would give me when I would come home from school. It was never a, hi, how are you? Kisses or hugs. No, it was, have you eaten yet? The welcome of food to her house was the warmest and first indications of hospitality I could have ever experienced. I took that same childhood experience with me throughout my life through business and communication. Many daughters and sons of immigrants never come back to help out at the business that they grew up in, whether it be laundromats or liquor stores. Many parents never want their kids to come back to it. It's hard work, manual, and long hours. Some parents want to hand off the business to their kids because of trust and stability. I came back because I knew they needed help, and I knew I was the only one for the job, and I did so with the tools that I gathered at school. I could have easily never come back home, almost dreading my mother's abrasive dragon mother tendencies, but I did it anyways, knowing that I could take it to the next level, never expecting it to be this successful. And with this whole experience, I've gained my voice and realized that these stories are left untold and are a rich representation of my culture and the world that I live in now.